This is my spoiler review on Inside Out 2. Check out part 1 for my quick spoiler-free review on if it's worth watching or not. 3, incredible. -3, garbage. 0, let's get to it. For personal enjoyment, I give it a 2 out of 3. It was fun and I was never bored. I do think I would have enjoyed the film much more if I didn't have anxiety and depression myself. I think because I do, I was hyper fixated on the fact that Pixar needed to nail their portrayal of anxiety. Not only to match my own personal experience, but also communicate to the audience how self-destructive and painful anxiety can be. Fortunately, Pixar nailed the portrayal of anxiety. I cried during the panic attack. The fear, the despair that she was going through, seeing how Riley was struggling to breathe, it was painful to watch. It was super effective. It was visceral. It was my favorite scene. The hug that Riley's emotions gave her new multitude sense of self was a cathartic release that I wish I had when I experienced my first panic attack. I cried with the film's message of, you're a complicated mess of all these emotions and beliefs, and it's a lot. But as long as you can love yourself, you'll be okay. It was beautiful. For film language, I also give it a 2 out of 3. The film was executed really well, but still had room to improve. Our two leads played the roles masterfully. You really felt the emotions from the voice acting of Amy Poehler's joy and Maya Hawke's anxiety. The first film tackled the idea of personifying our emotions and visualizing how our mind works. It had a concise cast with the freedom to explore a new world. Unfortunately, the sequel faced its own hurdles by simply not being the first. They couldn't be as concise since they were introducing a new cast of emotions, and they couldn't explore a world that was already explored. The lack of new world building made the film feel less magical than the first. The second film retreaded the first film's originality with the repeated story beat of getting from point A to point B, while the world structure hinders our main group of emotions. In the first film it was joy and sadness. This time it was joy, fear, anger, and disgust. Both films were creative in the different ways they represented the inner workings of our mind. The first film had the train of thought, while the second one had the stream of consciousness. The first film had brain freeze, while the second film had brainstorm. The first film had a great segment with abstract thought. It let the animators play around with how we see emotions in different forms. And this film has a similar piece with different animation styles of the characters in the vault to match the forms of medium that they're from. And while all of that was really fun, none of it felt really new, which is an unfortunate consequence of being the second film. It isn't Pixar's best film, but it's probably one of their most important films to date. Tackling anxiety is hard. Personifying anxiety is even harder. Yet, Pixar allows the story to mature with the audience that watched the first. It might not be as new, but it's still just as beautiful. Here are some rapid fire thoughts. I didn't know where to put them, but even though they managed to balance the large cast of emotions, old and new, it felt like the only new emotion that really did anything was anxiety. Envy was barely there. Ennui or boredom was also just kind of there. And embarrassment was fun. That was probably my second favorite new emotion, but it makes me think that the rest could have been cut or written out to allow more screen time to flesh out anxiety a bit more. I also really love the puberty demolition scene and the fact that it made the emotions be very intense without meaning to. That was a fun take. It made me sad to find out that Bill Hader didn't return for Fear, especially learning that he had a hand in the characterization in Lines for Fear. If you were to ignore the whole inside the head part of the film, the entire plot of the movie was very Disney Channel cliche, and I find that hilarious. The score is beautiful, so great job to Andrea Datzman. I love the detail of envy being tiny and embarrassment being huge, since you feel small when you're envious and you feel huge and noticeable when you're embarrassed. Riley in the first film was more of a vehicle for the emotions, and in the sequel she became more of a character. I actually cared about the actions and consequences that she was going through, and not just the emotions on the inside. The sarcasm scene didn't really make much sense to me. It was really fun, don't get me wrong, but it came across like if you're sarcastic, it destroys parts of your brain, and I don't think that's what happens when you're sarcastic. I just want to take a moment to highlight how important the themes of both films are. The first one said every emotion has its purpose and place, and then the second film says that while your emotions do help shape you, they don't make the entirety of you and shouldn't dictate who you are or what you do. I really want to appreciate how important that is for kids growing up and adults. Outside of Toy Story, previous sequels from Pixar felt unnecessary. It felt like we're just going to make a sequel to make a sequel. It didn't feel like their stories needed to be told. This one felt like the first movie just kept going, and I thought that was really nice. It didn't feel like a sequel itself. It felt like, hey, let's just keep the camera rolling. The first one had a really strong impact on me because at the time, I was also learning to allow myself to feel sadness. But having rewatched the film last night, I didn't feel as emotionally affected as I've actually come to embrace all of my emotions. Unfortunately, since anxiety is an emotion that I've become intimate with, the sequel really affected me. I can't say which one is more emotional compared to the other, but in general, I can say that the first film is better structured and paced, while the second film felt more mature and challenging. So in the end, I give Inside Out 2 a 2 out of 3. Did this sequel also have an impact on you? Did it relate to Riley's anxiety and your own personal experiences? Tell me your thoughts on these. Ask me questions in the comments, tell me your favorite scenes, let's discuss the movie, and tell me what movie you would like me to review next. I have 2 film recommendations on if you enjoyed the film or if you're looking for something similar. For a beautiful animation that makes you feel, I suggest I Lost My Body. For a film that introduces a great message that is entertaining and digestible for all ages, Pixar Soul. Thanks for watching, go watch Inside Out 2 and form your own opinion, and I'll see you in the next film review.